The debt collector's chains. The market square was filled with cold voices shouting, bargaining, and laughing. But in the center, where the stone platform stood, no one laughed. The platform was called the chain stage, and it was where debtors were brought when they had nothing left to pay. The alien girl stood there with her wrists tied in iron cuffs, her head bowed, her long hair tangled across her face. Her name was Lyra, and her crime was simple. She had owed money she could not repay. Her father had died in the mines, her mother had fallen sick, and Lyra had borrowed from the collectors to buy medicine. But the medicine had not saved her mother, and the debt had doubled with interest. Now the collectors had come to her door, dragging her through the streets. She had begged, she had pleaded, but no one had helped. No neighbor dared. No friend had the courage in this city. Debt was not forgiven. It was sold. The collector, a tall alien with gray skin and tusks like knives, raised his hand for silence. His deep voice boomed across the square. "This one is worth 7 cycles of labor," he growled. "She will be rented by the night to those who can pay. Her debt will be worked off in sweat and shame." The crowd cheered, some with cruel delight, others with empty eyes, for this was nothing new to them. To Lyra, it was the end of hope. Her knees shook and she thought she might fall. Her heart pounded as she was pushed down from the platform into the waiting line. The men and women who rented debtors stood nearby with coins in their hands. Most of them were harsh-looking, scarred or drunk with power. They whispered to each other, looking at her as if she were no more than cattle. Lyra felt her throat close. She wanted to cry, but no tears came. She had promised herself long ago that she would not let them see her break, yet inside she was already breaking. "First renter," the collector barked, holding up his ledger. "Step forward." The line shifted, boots clanging against the stone. A figure stepped out, and the crowd went quiet for a moment, because it was not one of them. It was not one of the usual cruel masters or greedy buyers. It was a human. He was tall, with rough hands and a coat that looked worn from travel. His eyes were dark but strangely gentle, and when he looked at Lyra, it was not the look of a man weighing his purchase. It was the look of someone seeing another soul. Whispers rippled through the crowd. "A human," someone spat. "They say humans are strange, they don't follow our ways." Another hissed, "He will break her quickly, just like the others." But there was unease in their voices because no one could ever predict a human. The collector narrowed his eyes. "You have coin, human?" he demanded. The man reached into his pocket and dropped a heavy pouch on the table. The sound of clinking metal silenced even the loudest voices. "Paid in full," the human said simply, his voice low, steady. Lyra's heart sank. Her first master would be human. She had heard stories of them. Some said they were monsters. Others said they were saints. Which one was standing before her? She could not tell. The chains on her wrists were yanked, dragging her toward him. She stumbled, nearly falling, but strong hands caught her, not rough, not cruel, but steady. He lifted her up with surprising care. For a moment her eyes met his and something flickered inside her. Not hope. No. Hope was too dangerous. It was something smaller, something she did not even recognize. The collector barked out the rules. "She is yours until the sun rises. If she fails you, punish her. If she disobeys, return her broken. Her debt will remain. Her spirit is yours to use." The human did not answer. He only looked at Lyra again, and she noticed that he had not gripped her arm in pain, but rather held her gently, as if he were afraid she might collapse. As they walked away from the platform, the crowd muttered. Some laughed, others shook their heads. They all believed she would return the same way every debtor did, empty-eyed, hollow, another soul crushed. But Lyra's chest was tight, her steps trembling, because the man beside her was different. She felt it in the way his hand steadied, her without force, in the way he did not look at her like a thing to be owned, but like a person. She told herself it was a trick. She told herself not to believe. Yet her heart whispered otherwise. And for the first time since the collectors dragged her away, Lyra wondered if fate had made a mistake, or if something had finally changed. The streets grew darker as the human led Lyra away from the chain stage. The laughter of the crowd faded behind them, leaving only the sound of her own heartbeat. Her wrists still burned from the chains, her legs trembled, every step felt heavier than the last. She did not dare to look up at him. She only stared at the ground, expecting at any moment for him to drag her into one of the taverns or back rooms where debtors were usually taken. Her mind braced itself for the cruelty she had seen happen to others. But instead, he guided her down a quiet street, away from the drinking halls, away from the red lanterns and the gambling dens. The silence of the alley made her even more afraid. What kind of man avoided the usual places? What did he want with her? Finally, he stopped before a small stone house with a wooden door. It looked old and weathered, not the kind of place she imagined for someone rich enough to pay the collectors in full. He pushed the door open and motioned for her to enter. Lyra hesitated, her chains clinking softly, but his eyes met hers again, and there was no command in them, only patience. She stepped inside. The air smelled of firewood and bread, not smoke or blood. A small lamp burned in the corner, lighting the room with a golden glow. Her eyes widened at the sight of a simple table, a chair, and a bed pushed against the far wall. There was no whip, no iron hook, none of the cruel tools she had expected. The human closed the door behind them and removed his coat. Placing it neatly on the chair, he moved with a calmness that confused her. He did not rush to claim her. He did not stare at her with hunger. Instead, he went to the table, picked up a loaf of bread, and broke it in half. "Eat," he said, his voice steady. Lyra blinked. Her lips parted, but no words came. She stared at the bread in his hand. It had been days since she had tasted real food. The collectors had fed her only scraps. Her stomach twisted painfully, but she shook her head, in disbelief. "Why?" she whispered, her voice hoarse. "Why feed me?" The human shrugged slightly. "Because you're starving," he said, as if it were the simplest truth in the world. Her chains rattled as she reached out, her fingers trembling. She took the bread and bit into it. The taste was so warm and soft that tears stung her eyes. She quickly turned her head away, ashamed, to let him see her cry. He watched her silently for a moment, then pulled a jug of water from the shelf and poured it into a wooden cup. He set it down in front of her without a word. Lyra drank, her hands shaking so much that a little spilled. Down her chin still, she drank until her chest no longer ached with thirst. Only then did she look at him again, uncertain. You don't want me," she said quietly, half afraid the words would anger him. The man leaned against the table, crossing his arms. "I didn't buy you to break you," he said. "I bought you because I couldn't watch them tear you apart." Her breath caught. The words sounded impossible. No one ever bought a debtor for kindness. No one ever spared a soul from the collectors unless they wanted something worse in return. She searched his face for a lie, but there was none. She lowered, her eyes again, her chest tight. "You're human," she whispered. "They say your kind is strange." A faint smile touched his lips, though it did not reach his eyes. "Strange is one word for it," he said softly. "But sometimes being strange means doing what others won't." Silence stretched between them, broken only by the crackling of the fire in the hearth. Lyra finished the bread slowly, each bite filling a hollow inside her she had carried for too long. Her body grew warm, but her mind was restless. She wanted to ask why. She wanted to demand what he truly wanted from her, but the words stuck in her throat, fear and hope tangled together. Instead, she whispered, "What is your name?" "Call me Kale," he said simply. "And yours?" "Lyra," she answered, her voice faint. He nodded as if memorizing it. "Rest tonight, Lyra. The chains can wait until morning." Her eyes widened. She had expected no rest, no mercy, and yet he pulled a small blanket from the shelf and placed it on the bed, motioning for her to sit. She hesitated, afraid it was a trick, but his face was steady, his hands open. Slowly, she sat on the edge of the bed, clutching the blanket close. Her heart raced. She could not understand him. She did not trust him, and yet, for the first time in years, she did not feel like prey. Kyle returned to the table and sat down, leaning back in the chair, his eyes half closed as if he were simply tired from the day. He did not touch her. He did not command her. He only said, "Sleep. You're safe here tonight." Safe, the word echoed in her mind like a foreign language. She curled under the blanket, trembling, her chains heavy but her heart heavier, and still, as her eyes slowly closed, she felt something she thought she had lost forever. The smallest spark of hope. Morning light slipped through the cracks of the small house, touching Lyra's face with a warmth she had not felt in years. She stirred, half expecting to wake up on the cold stone of the debtor's cell. But instead, she lay on the soft blanket, her chains still heavy on her wrists, yet her body fed. Her thirst quenched. For a brief moment she forgot where she was. Then her eyes opened and she saw the human Kale, sitting by the table sharpening a small knife. He glanced at her as she moved, his gaze calm, steady, not cruel, not hungry. "Food, first," he said simply, and set down a plate with more bread and dried meat. Her stomach tightened. She was used to scraps, barely enough to survive, but here the food was enough for strength. She ate slowly, wary, but Kale only leaned back, in his chair watching her as if studying something more important than her chains. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft. "Why are you doing this?" Kale did not answer right away. He wiped the blade with a cloth, then set it aside. "Because I've seen what the collectors do. I've seen it too many times. I can't undo the system, but I can stop one person from being broken." Lyra's chest tightened. She wanted to believe him, but disbelief was safer. Hope was dangerous. She lowered her eyes. "You can't protect me forever," she whispered. "They'll take me back, they always do." Kale's lips pressed into a thin line. "Maybe," he admitted. "But until then, you're not their property. You're Lyra." The way he said her name made her heart stumble. No one had said it like that in so long. Not as a number on a debt ledger, not as a curse, but as a person. Later, he gave her water and let her wash her face in the small basin by the door. The cool touch of it made her feel alive again. Almost human. She caught her reflection in the water's surface and barely recognized the girl looking back. Tired eyes, tangled hair, but not yet broken. Outside, the whispers began. The neighbors noticed. The collectors noticed. A debtor who returned from her first night with her spirit still alive, that was unheard of. The other debtors looked at her with wide eyes, some with envy, some with quiet hope. One woman in chains leaned close as they passed in the market, her voice hushed. "Is it true? Did the human spare you?" Lyra flinched, afraid to answer, afraid the truth might be stolen from her the moment it was spoken. She only lowered her gaze, but the woman smiled sadly. "If it's true, then maybe not all nights end in ashes." The whispers spread like smoke, in the taverns, in the alleys. In the dark corners of the city, people muttered about the human who did not break his debtor. Some mocked him, others warned that he was foolish, but among the broken and the lost, a seed of hope stirred. That night when they returned to the small stone house, Lyra dared to ask, "Why risk yourself? They will punish you for showing mercy. They hate kindness." Kale poured water into the jug, his movements slow, thoughtful. "Maybe I've lived long enough to stop caring what they hate," he said. "Or maybe I remember what it felt like to be powerless." Her eyes widened. "You," she whispered. "You were chained once." He did not answer at once. His jaw tightened. His eyes looked far away. Then he said quietly, "Yes. In another place, another time. I know what it means to have everything taken and to be treated as nothing. I swore if I ever had the strength, I wouldn't let it happen to someone else." Lyra's breath caught. His words sank deep inside her. She did not know why, but she believed him. And belief was more frightening than fear, because belief was the first step toward hope. Silence fell between them, but it was not the heavy silence of dread. It was something softer, almost fragile, as if words could break it. Later, when the fire burned low, she lay awake under the blanket, her chains cold against her skin, yet her heart warm. She thought of the whispers, of the woman's eyes in the market, of Kale's voice saying her name. For the first time since the collectors had dragged her away, she dared to think of tomorrow not as another day of punishment, but as something that might hold more. She closed her eyes, clutching the small spark inside her chest, whispering to herself words she had not spoken in years. Maybe I'm not lost. And outside in the city full of chains and debts, hope began to move quietly, like a whisper too soft for the overseers to hear, but strong enough to spread. The days passed slowly, yet each one felt different from the last. For Lyra, the world had always been the same. Chains, hunger, punishment. But now there was something new in her life, something she could not explain. Kyle, the human. He never treated her like a debtor. He gave her food each morning, water to drink, and even let her sit by the fire when the nights grew cold. At first she thought it was a trick, that one day he would reveal his true cruelty. But that day never came. Instead, he asked simple questions. "What food do you like?" he asked once. She froze, staring at him in disbelief. No one had ever asked her that. She did not even know how to answer. I don't remember," she whispered. He nodded, not pushing further, as if her answer was enough. But outside their quiet walls, the city was restless. The collectors had noticed the whispers. A debtor who had not been broken after her first night. That was dangerous. It made others wonder. It made them dream. One evening, Cale returned later than usual, his face shadowed. Lyra sat by the fire, clutching the blanket. She could see the weight in his eyes. "They're watching us," he said finally. "The collectors don't like what they're hearing. They'll try to make an example." Lyra's heart pounded. Then you should let me go back. If they see you protect me, they'll hurt you too." Cale's expression hardened. "No," he said. "I won't hand you back to them. They don't own you anymore." His words stunned her. "But my debt. The ledger." He cut her off, his voice firm. "The ledger means nothing to me. I've seen what they do. I won't let them write the rest of your life in ink and chains." For a moment, she could not breathe. His defiance was reckless, even foolish, but it was also something she had never seen before. Someone standing for her, not because of profit, not because of gain, but simply because he chose to. That night, when she could not sleep, she asked him softly, "Why, Cale? Why risk yourself for me?" He was silent for a long time, staring into the fire. Then he spoke, his voice low, almost heavy. "Because once, I was where you are." Her eyes widened. She sat up, chains clinking softly. You were a debtor." He nodded slowly. "Not in this city, not even on this world, but yes, once I was nothing more than a name on a list, chained and sold." She swallowed hard. "How did you escape?" Cale's eyes darkened, the firelight flickering across his face. "I didn't escape," he said. "I was freed by someone who believed I was worth more than my debt, someone who risked everything to give me a chance." Lyra's breath caught, her chest tight. "And now, you're doing the same." A faint smile touched his lips, but it was a sad one. "Maybe. Or maybe I'm just paying back a debt of my own, not the kind written in coin, but the kind carved into the soul." Her heart ached at his words. She wanted to ask more, wanted to know who had saved him, what pain he had carried, but she saw in his eyes that the memories were sharp, too sharp to touch. Instead, she whispered, "Thank you." The words trembling from her lips. They felt too small, too weak. But they were all she had. Kyle nodded as if he understood. He leaned back, his gaze still on the fire. "They'll come soon, Lyra. They'll try to take you, maybe hurt me too, but I need you to know this. You're not a debt, you're not a number, you're more than what they made you." Tears filled her eyes, but she blinked them back. She had sworn long ago never to cry in front of anyone. Yet with Cale, the tears felt less like weakness and more like truth. The next morning, the tension was heavier. In the market, people stared as they passed, some with curiosity, others with fear. One debtor, a thin boy, with hollow cheeks, whispered as she passed, "Is it true, Lyra? Does the human treat you like a person?" Her throat tightened. She wanted to answer, but she only gave the smallest nod. The boy's eyes widened, and for the first time, he smiled, a fragile smile, full of longing. The whispers grew louder that day, traveling faster than footsteps. "The human shows mercy. The human feeds his debtor. The human remembers their names. The overseers heard too, and their eyes sharpened. Kyle could feel it. He walked with his hand close to the knife at his belt, his body tense. That night, he spoke quietly, his voice carrying the weight of choice. Lyra, if they come, you have to decide. Do you want to run or do you want to fight alongside me? Her heart raced. She had never been given a choice before. Never. Her life had always been chains and commands. But now Kale's eyes waited for her answer, patient, steady, as if her voice mattered. I don't know how to fight, she admitted, trembling. Then I'll teach you, he said. Because no one deserves to live forever in chains. And in that moment, something inside her shifted. Not just hope, but the first spark of courage. The city was never silent, even at night. The market slept, but the alleys did not. Whispers crawled through the darkness like insects, whispers about the human and the debtor girl who had not been broken. The overseers listened, their sharp eyes, watching from the corners, their ears catching every rumor. To them, it was not just one girl's fate, it was power. Fear kept the debtors obedient, and if one girl returned unbroken, it planted doubt. Doubt was dangerous. Lyra felt it in the air. Every step she took in the market made her skin prickle. People looked at her differently, some with secret smiles, others with scorn. She could hear them mutter when she passed. The human spares her. The human feeds her. Maybe the human will spare us too, Kale noticed as well. His hand never strayed far from the knife at his belt. His shoulders were always tense. He walked like a man expecting a blade at his back. One evening, as they walked home with bread tucked under Kale's arm, a shadow slipped out of the alley. A man with scarred cheeks and iron teeth, two more followed, their eyes glowing faintly in the lamplight. Human, the scarred one growled, blocking their path. The overseers don't like your games. They say the girl's debt is not being paid. Kale's gaze hardened. Her debt is paid in full, he said calmly. I gave the collectors their coin. The scarred man sneered. Coin doesn't matter when hope spreads. Hope makes slaves think they're free. You're stirring. Poison. Lyra's heart pounded. She gripped the edge of her chain, her body tense. Kale stepped slightly in front of her, shielding her without a word. Go back to your masters, Kale said, his voice low. Tell them I won't play their game. The man's grin widened, sharp and cold. Then you'll regret it. He spat before melting back into the alley with his companions, their laughter echoing behind them. That night, Kale barred the door with an iron rod and kept the fire burning. Lyra sat by the flames, her hands trembling. They'll kill you, she whispered. The overseers don't forgive defiance. Kale's jaw was tight, his eyes steady. I've faced worse, he said, though she could hear the weight behind his words. She hugged her knees, her voice small. Why not send me back, Kale? You'd be safe then. His eyes softened. Safe means nothing if I abandon what's right, he said quietly. I told you before. I know what it's like to be where you are. I won't let them drag you back. Her chest ached. No one had ever spoken like that for her. No one had ever chosen her safety over their own. It frightened her and comforted her at the same time. The following days grew darker. Kyle trained her in secret. In the small yard behind the house, he showed her how to grip a wooden stick, how to keep her balance, how to strike if someone grabbed her chain. At first, her arms shook, her swings weak, but he was patient, correcting her gently. You don't need strength, he said. You need timing, courage, and the will to stand. Her body grew sore, but she endured each day a little less fear, a little more resolve. For the first time in her life, she felt like more than prey. But the overseers moved too. Late one night when Kyle went to fetch water, Lyra woke to the sound of scratching at the shutters. She froze, listening. Then a voice hissed through the cracks. Debt girl, your protector won't last. When he falls, you'll crawl back to us begging. Her heart pounded. She did not answer. She gripped the blanket tight, but the voice lingered like smoke before fading into the night. When Kale returned, she told him. His face grew grim. They're trying to break your spirit before they strike, he said. Don't listen. They only have power if you believe them. But fear lingered in her chest, stronger than ever. The next day, they went to the market, the air heavy with tension. A fight had broken out near the debtors' stage. A young man chained and dragged, screaming that he would not serve. Overseers beat him until the blood ran, and the crowd watched in silence. The message was clear. Defiance would be crushed. Lyra's hands shook, but Kale steadied her, his voice quiet. "This is why we stand, so they cannot break us all." That night, as the fire burned low, Lyra whispered, "Kale, if they take you, what will I do?" He looked at her, his eyes steady even in the flickering light. "Then you'll keep standing. You'll carry the hope forward, because once a spark is lit, they can't put it out." Her breath trembled. She wanted to tell him she was not strong enough, that she was only one broken girl. But his words planted something inside her, deeper than fear, stronger than pain. In the shadows outside, overseers gathered, their eyes gleaming, their whispers sharp. The time to strike was close, and inside the small stone house, Kale sharpened his blade while Lyra lay awake, her heart torn between terror and a fragile, dangerous hope. The night came heavy with silence. The streets outside Kale's house were too quiet. The usual laughter from the taverns was gone. Even the dogs that scavenged the alleys were missing. Lyra sat by the fire, her chains cold against her wrists, her heart uneasy. Kale sharpened his knife at the table, each scrape of the blade against stone echoing in the small room. He had not spoken much all evening, but Lyra could see the storm in his eyes. He was waiting, expecting, and then it came, a pounding at the door, harsh and sharp, the kind of knock. That was not a request but a command. "Open, human," a voice growled, deep and cruel. By order of the overseers, the girl returns to the stage. Lyra's blood ran cold. Her breath caught in her chest. Kale rose slowly, slipping the knife. Into his belt, he barred the door tighter with the iron rod, his voice calm though heavy. "She is not yours." The voice outside laughed, low and mocking. "Everything in debt is ours. You paid coin, but you bought nothing. We decide when her chains end, not you." The door shook as fists slammed against it. Then came the sound of wood splintering, heavy boots striking. Kale turned to Lyra, his eyes steady. "Remember what I told you. Stay low. Stay behind me." Her hands trembled, but she nodded, pressing herself against the wall. The door cracked open with a roar of wood breaking. Shadows poured in. 3 overseers, thick-armed and armored, their tusks gleaming in the firelight, their eyes cold and merciless. One stepped forward, sneering, "Step aside, human, or we'll cut you down too." Kale's hand gripped his knife, his voice firm. "You'll take nothing tonight." The overseer lunged. Kale moved like lightning, his blade flashing. Cutting across the alien's arm, the overseer roared in pain. The fight erupted. Lyra's heart hammered as Kale struck with precision. Every move sharp, controlled. But the overseers were strong. One swung a heavy club that crashed against the table, splintering wood. Another grabbed for Lyra's chain. She screamed, jerking back. Kale turned, slashing the chain apart before the overseer could drag her. Sparks flew as iron snapped. Lyra stumbled free, staring in shock at her wrists, the chain broken for the first time. "Run," Kale barked, blocking the overseer's path. But Lyra did not run. Something inside her refused. She grabbed the broken length of chain and swung it like a whip, striking the overseer across the face. His snarl turned into a howl as blood streaked down his cheek. Kale's eyes flicked to her, just for a moment, pride glinting there. Then he turned back to the fight, his blade sinking deep into another attacker's side. The room filled with chaos, shouts, firelight, the clash of steel and bone. Lyra's fear burned away, replaced by something else, not courage exactly, but defiance. When the last overseer fell to his knees, clutching his wound, Kale stood over him, knife ready. "Go back," Kale said coldly. "Tell your masters the girl is free. Tell them she will never return." The overseer spat blood, his eyes full of hate. "They will burn you for this, human," he hissed. "They will burn your house, your name, your soul." Kale's jaw tightened. "Let them try," he growled, then kicked the overseer out the shattered door. Silence followed, broken only by the crackle of the fire. The floor was stained with blood, The table destroyed, the door hanging loose, but in the center of it all stood Lyra, her wrists bare, the chains broken, her chest rising and falling in disbelief. She looked at Kale, trembling. You freed me." Kyle wiped the blade clean, his voice quiet. "I told you no one deserves chains." Her eyes filled with tears. But this time she did not hide them. They fell freely down her cheeks as she whispered, "Why risk everything for me?" He looked at her then, truly looked, his eyes steady. "Because kindness is the only rebellion they cannot crush." Lyra's breath caught. The words cut deeper than any blade. Because they were true. Because they were dangerous. Because they were hers now too. That night, they did not sleep. They sat together by the fire, the broken chain lying on the floor between them, a symbol of everything that had changed. Outside, the city stirred with whispers, overseers bleeding in the streets, a debtor freed, a human who defied the system. The whispers grew louder, turning into voices, voices into rumors, rumors into hope. And Lyra, for the first time in her life, felt the weight of choice. She was no longer just a debtor, no longer just a victim. She was something else now, something the overseers feared. A spark of rebellion. Dawn came red over the city, smoke curling from chimneys, but the streets were not calm. The overseers' defeat had shaken everything. Whispers ran through every market stall and alley. The human cut their chains. The girl fought back. Maybe the collectors can be defied. In the small stone house, Kale bound his arm where a blade had grazed him, his movement steady though his body bore the marks of the fight. Lyra sat across from him, staring at the broken chain on the floor, her wrists still raw but free. Her voice trembled when she spoke. "They will come again, won't they?" Kale nodded, his eyes dark. "Yes, and next time they won't send 3, they'll send an army." Lyra's heart twisted. Fear gnawed at her. But beneath it burned something else, a fire she had never felt before. "Then we can't stay," she whispered. "If we stay, they'll kill you. They'll chain me again." Kyle looked at her, his gaze steady. "If we run, there's no coming back. The city will mark us as traitors. The overseers will hunt us across the stars." She hesitated, then lifted her chin, her voice soft but unbroken. "Then let them hunt. I'd rather die free than live in chains." The words surprised even her, but Kale's lips curved into the faintest smile. "That's the spirit they fear," he said. "Not blades, not coin, but the will to be free." That evening, as the city grew restless, they prepared. Kale gathered supplies. Bread, water, a small pouch of coins. Lyra took a cloak to hide her face, the weight of the broken chain she carried too, not as a shackle but as a reminder. But the overseers moved faster than expected. By nightfall, the streets thundered with boots, torches blazing. A voice roared across the square. "Bring us the human. Bring us the debtor girl. Their rebellion ends tonight." The people watched from their windows, silent, afraid, yet behind. The fear glimmered something dangerous. Hope. Kale gripped Lyra's hand, pulling her toward the back door, but before they could slip away, the house shook as the front was kicked in, overseers flooding inside. Their tusks gleaming, their clubs raised. "Run!" Kale shouted, shoving Lyra toward the alley. But she did not run alone. This time she swung the broken chain like a whip, striking an overseer across the head. He stumbled, roaring in rage. Kale's blade flashed, cutting another down. The small house filled with firelight, steel, and the sound of rebellion. They burst into the street, Lyra's cloak billowing, Kyle at her side, the overseers close behind, torches lighting the chase. The city square loomed ahead, filled with debtors, merchants, and children hiding behind stalls. All eyes turned as they saw the human and the girl running. Overseers at their heels. Kale stopped suddenly in the center of the square, pulling Lyra close, his voice booming. "You all see this. They want to chain her, they want to chain us all, but tonight I say no." The overseers snarled, closing in, but the crowd stirred, whispers rising into shouts. No more chains. No more. Overseers. Lyra's chest tightened, her fear clashing with something greater. She raised the broken chain high, her voice breaking but strong. I was nothing to them, but he called me Lyra. He fed me, he freed me. If one human can stand, why not all of us? The crowd roared, the sound shaking the night. Overseers hesitated. For the first time in years, they saw not silence, not obedience, but defiance burning in every eye. Kale's blade gleamed as he stood tall. Choose now, he called to the people. Stay silent and live as slaves, or rise and live as free. Men and women, the overseers charged, but they did not reach. The crowd surged forward, stones, sticks, and fury in their hands. The square exploded into chaos. The overseers found themselves outnumbered, their power broken not by weapons, but by will. In the middle of the storm, Kyle fought like a wall. His knife cutting down threats, Lyra stayed close, swinging her chain, each strike stronger than the last. Together they stood, no longer master and debtor, but equals. When the last overseer fell, silence returned, heavy and raw. The people stood breathless, staring at Kale and Lyra, at the broken chain still clutched in her hand. Kale looked at her, his face tired but steady. It's done, he whispered. The spark is caught. Lyra's eyes filled with tears, but her voice was clear. Not just because of me, not just because of you, but because kindness lit the fire. He reached out, his rough hand brushing her cheek. Kindness, he said softly. And love. She froze, her breath catching, her heart pounding. She had never heard the word spoken like that. Not as a dream, not as a lie, but as truth. The crowd watched as she leaned against him, not in chains, not in fear, but in freedom. And in that moment, in the heart of the city that once thrived on cruelty, something new was born. Not just rebellion, not just freedom, but a future bought with love.